Hello and welcome to World Talks, where every word matters. I'm your host, Sasha Farbach. Now, as the EU summit approaches in December, there is an air of anticipation surrounding talks about potential new members joining the club. One country that's been eyeing EU membership for quite some time has found itself in a somewhat uncertain position over the years. Turkey has held aspirations to join the EU for a while, but recent shifts away from European democratic norms and legal standards have raised questions. This leaves many wondering, what role could Turkey play, and is there a way to accommodate the nation within the European family? Let's discuss all that now further, and for that I'm joined by Eytan Cohen Yanarocak, a Turkey expert at the Moshe Dayan Center for Middle Eastern and African Studies at Tel Aviv University. Hello, thank you so much for joining us here on TVP World. Good to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Now, I guess one of those questions right now would be interesting to start with. Does Erdogan's Turkey belong in the EU, or rather, does Turkey belong in the EU? I think these are two different questions. So to both of those, I ask you, does Turkey or Erdogan's Turkey belong in the EU?
Okay, first of all, we should put this fact on the ground. Turkey of Erdogan is far different from Turkey of Mustafa Kemal Atatürk that was found in 1923. Atatürk, the founding father of the Turkish Republic, turned his face to Europe and did everything so that all successive Turkish governments would adopt the European ideals. But since 2002, we are seeing the Justice and Development Party in Turkey, and at the very beginning, they also adopted the European ideals. But in retrospect, we can say that they adopted these ideals just to weaken the Turkish armed forces in the Turkish state mechanisms, because at the end of the day, the European Union accession dictated Turkey to adopt demilitarization of the Turkish state mechanisms. So in the very beginning, Mr. Erdogan was seemingly perceived by the Turkish public as the one who could deliver a genuine democracy for the Turkish people. Mm-hmm. But in the end, we all understood that he used these European accession reform packages to weaken the Turkish army, and in a very gradual manner, he could eliminate all of the balancing powers in the Turkish state system and acquired a very centralized state system. So it's a tough question whether today's Turkey should be a part of the European Union. I still believe that the Turkish public's majority do believe in being a part of the Western nation. However, the Turkish government today is seemingly trying to portray here an independent Turkish foreign policy, which is detached from the Western world. Yeah. What I mean by the Western world, not only European Union, but also when we are looking at NATO, they are also adopting very controversial decisions. There are two very significant examples. The first one is Russia, and the second one is the Hamas. As we can see, despite being a member of the NATO, Turkey does not adopt the NATO decisions vis-a-vis Russia. Turkey is not limiting Russia's activity. Turkey is not isolating Russia, provides to Russia its airspace. And also when it comes to the Hamas terrorist organization, unfortunately, once again, we are seeing that Turkey is adopting an independent foreign policy approach and basically distinguishing itself from the West. So
I hear what you're saying, if I may. I hear what you're saying, and granted, what you've said with Erdogan very much guiding his own policy for quite some time. But nevertheless, I think some criticism can also be directed, I think if we're talking about Hamas and Israel, at some other European nations who also policy is a bit unclear in that. But that's a different topic. I probably, if I were to go on to most people in the streets across Europe, right now, most people would probably have forgotten that Turkey is still actually a candidate country for membership. I mean, this is something that has been ongoing. I mean, it became a candidate in 1999. Then accession talks finally began in 2004. And back then, it's an interesting quote here by former Prime Minister Tony Blair during those accession talks, which began in 2004. He hailed it as a historic event that showed there was no clash of civilizations. So obviously, a lot has happened in that time, but significant that was very much a topic. That was very much, I think, many people were hoping this would move forward, as you've rightly already told us. I mean, there's been a shift in what happened in Turkey. But nevertheless, looking at it, I think from a practical point of view, does the candidate, keeping Turkey a candidate, make sense here? Because I think the alternative, even shutting the door more to Turkey, might actually work in detriment to the European Union. What do you make of that?
Okay, I think we should analyze this question in two different dimensions. The first dimension will be based on idealism. According to idealism, this accession process should have been terminated long ago. Because we are seeing that, unfortunately, the freedom of speech is a crucial problem in Turkey. And we are seeing an excessive centralization. We had some problems with the latest elections, especially during the propaganda process. That was not a fair propaganda process, etc., etc. The list is unfortunately is very long. However, when we are talking about international relations, as a pure realist, I believe in realism and not, unfortunately, in idealism, with all due respect. And in this regard, the West, including United States and Israel, we all have to acknowledge the importance of Turkey as a regional power. And we have to do everything not to lose this important state to the hands of the axis of evil countries, of course, the first and foremost, Iran. And therefore, we have to carry on this accession process or these intimate relations with Turkey in order not to lose Turkey. I think we have to differentiate between the Turkish state and the Turkish government. I think this would be very wise to adopt such a perspective on Turkey, because I don't think that the West has the luxury of losing Turkey. Turkey is sitting on a very important geopolitical position in terms of geography. Via Turkey you can reach to Caucasia, to Iran, to Middle East, to Black Sea. So it's a very crucial player, and therefore I think the Western leaders are very cautious when they are taking steps towards Turkey. It should be a very balanced carrots and sticks. Yeah. The Turkish government should also understand that it also needs the West as the West needs Turkey.
But at the same time, I mean, I hear that we have to tread between realism and idealism. I know that. I think maybe Tony Blair was not quite right on that side of history. But let's go also what you've said, being practical. And I think also just very recently, I mean, we have that EU summit coming up. This will be debated. We have new members potentially being discussed, accession talks as well. And I just want to share one quick quote here. For the European Parliament's rapporteur on Turkey, Mr. Nacho Sanchez Amor, and he said, "We're tired of maintaining the accession process alive when apparently there is no real political will from the other side to advance on democratic standards." So in line with what you've said, that very much the political will, and there's nothing really tangible. If we look at the reforms, there's nothing tangible that has happened on the Turkish side. And of course, Erdogan uses that, as we've already mentioned, for his interests as a geopolitical power. Now, let's look at somewhere in the middle. If we look at something practical, some are foreseeing potentially looking at reviving talks on a customs union, maybe visa liberalization. So is there a middle ground here where the EU can still retain Turkey in some way, a close ally, without giving it full membership? Was this going to fly for Erdogan? How do you see that playing out potentially?
Okay, first of all, we should also put this fact on the table. It's not only for the Europeans that the people are questioning whether Turkey should become a member of the European or not. It's also for the Turks. There are many proud Turkish nationalists. They do not believe that Turkey should be a part of the European Union. So these people should also not be forgotten. They want to push Turkey into the arms of Russia and China. And therefore, as I said before, the Europeans should be wiser. And regarding your question, that if there can be another solution for Turkey's status, I do not think that the Turkish government would embrace such an offer. In their eyes, they would see this as a very humiliating approach, behavior, let me say. And therefore, unfortunately, we will going to see most likely the current shape, the current policy will continue. I would like to make a metaphor here, an analogy here. We are seeing the same phenomenon in the so-called Middle East peace process. Unfortunately, we are not seeing a tangible peace in the Middle East between the Palestinians and the Israelis. But still, nobody is willing to admit the inefficiency of this process. But still, people are talking about this to provide a political horizon. Mm-hmm. I believe this is also applicable for Turkey's accession process, because otherwise, if we are going to declare the end of this process, so also the Turks and also the Europeans will have to take a very decisive, very radical decisions, and it would be very impactful on the regional policies. Mm-hmm.
I suppose in one matter, I mean, this is not the European Union, but if we mentioned earlier NATO as well. I mean, it seems very much that even on that front, Erdogan specifically, I won't say the Turkish people, but Erdogan seems to be not very much a team player. We're still waiting for that green light from the parliament in Ankara to approve Sweden's accession bid for membership of NATO. We're still waiting for that. It's still being held up. So even on that front, on just the security front, he already seems a reluctant ally. I mean, we've talked about this many times, but do you foresee at all any sort of a policy shift? I mean, we only see almost more egregious words from Erdogan recently also about what he said regarding Israel. Very offensive, I think, not on any sort of state level. Just briefly at the end, how is that role also going to be affected here, Turkey's role in NATO? And should we be maybe stronger on that front as well with Turkey to be more in line with the alliance?
Okay, now I will provide you an angle from the Turkish perspective. The Turks wanted to acquire the Patriot anti-ballistic missile systems, and they couldn't. And as a result, they bought S-400s. And as a result of this purchase, the U.S. began to imposed sanctions against the Turkish government, and therefore they were also disqualified from the F-35, the Joint Strike Fighter project. And since they already paid all of the sums of money to buy the F-35s, the Turks are still trying to buy F-16s from the United States, but because of the because of the decision of the Congress, now they still could not acquire these fighter jets. And as a result, recently the Turkish president visited Olaf Scholz, the German chancellor, and he basically expressed his desire to buy the Eurofighters.
Right. So on the Eurofighters, it's jet fighters and equipment that seems to be one of the main causes. I want to hear more, but unfortunately we have to conclude there. But really appreciate that insight. Thank you very much. That was my guest, Eytan Cohen Yanarocak. Thank you so much for all that. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you for watching. That concludes World Talks, but stay tuned. Much more coming up on TVP World. Goodbye.